Thank you so much, Senator, for being here with me today. I'm excited to chat with you about the State of the Union last night. So, do you think, obviously we've seen all of the fact checking that has come out after the State of the Union. Do you feel that President Trump got anything right last night? And no is a perfectly acceptable answer, let's be clear.
So it's easier to start with all the things he got wrong. But
Sure.
your question is, did he get anything right? And, I think America is celebrating its 250th birthday. There are some things that we feel great pride in. Whether that's our Olympic champions, which obviously Donald Trump focused on a
Right.
lot with regard
Right.
to the U.S. men's hockey team, but also really recognizing veterans whose stories hadn't been told before. And I do think that those are things that Americans feel proud to celebrate together. But this president gave a very, very divisive address at a
Right.
moment where we always look forward historically to State of the Unions talking about issues that bring us together as a nation. And it was also clear in a way that this president was scared. His failure to address the issues on which he is incredibly vulnerable and incredibly unpopular just shows how scared he is of those. The biggest issue on the minds of Americans, American families, is how they're just not getting ahead anymore, how everything costs way too
Right.
much. And he spent just a couple minutes on affordability and mostly mocking the idea of how spread thin Americans are by saying that affordability is some Democratic hoax.
Yeah.
That's not the reality of the people who I represent in Wisconsin.
Right.
And the other thing he didn't mention at all was ICE.
Yeah. Fascinating that he didn't bring that in
And I
whatsoever.
think he understands that when he has this rogue, lawless agency that has killed 2 U.S. citizens, that is roaming residential neighborhoods with masks and big arms and not identifying themselves and not being held to account, that is un-American. And he failed to acknowledge any of that. I guess the other thing, and this relates back to the affordability issue, is that the Supreme Court just struck down his tariffs. And that
Yeah.
has been a component of making things unaffordable for families, for small businesses, for farmers, for manufacturers, threatening our economy. And he had an opportunity to sort of gracefully back out of his most unpopular policy and instead double down. I think
Right.
this guy is afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it begs the question how Republicans are feeling going into the 2026 midterms. I
Mm-hmm.
am sure that that is an area of concern for a lot of them, or at least I think it, rightfully should be, especially after last night. And yeah, fascinating that immigration was not brought up literally in the slightest. I did not have that one pegged. I really thought at minimum he would talk about, of course, the successes of ICE and and everything that he thinks they've done. So I was shocked to not hear about that whatsoever.
Yeah, he was terrified to talk about ICE, but he wasn't
Yeah.
terrified to continue his exaggerated claims about um, immigrants in a nation that is built upon generations of immigrants.
Right, right, exactly. So, I think a lot of this, especially the concept of affordability, that is at the top of everyone's mind. I think that is something that a lot of Americans are wondering, well, what is going to impact me on a day-to-day basis? What policy could be passed this year that could, really positively impact our wallets? So what do you think that policy could be? Is there a policy that if passed this year would materially change someone's monthly budget of, the average working American?
Right. Well, it's said that Trump's tariffs cost the average family in the United States $1,700 last year.
Wow.
So obviously, figuring out a way to stop this president's lawless overreach on tariffs will have some immediate positive relief for American families, for our farmers, for our small businesses, for our manufacturers, all of whom are experiencing tariffs in different ways, whether it's the cost of their inputs or the elimination of their export markets so that they don't have places to sell their goods because of the trade wars that are going on. So that's clearly one. I think there's another one that Democrats have been talking about and proposing really workable policies on for a while that the president, I think last night, acknowledged were right. And that's with regard to housing. So
Yeah.
not every American has housing struggles, but most do. And what
Yeah.
do I mean by that? Everyone sees rents going up for those who are renters. But the housing stock is so constrained for all sorts of reasons that we have seen in this last year the average age of a first-time home buyer go up to 40. I mean, that's
Wow.
unbelievable. You think
Yeah.
about the American dream, and part of the cornerstone of the American dream is being able to buy a house.
Yeah.
And anyways, so the president has stolen a page from something we've been working on for a long time, which is trying to stop corporations from gobbling up housing stock and making it unavailable for home buyers. And oftentimes then becoming sort of like corporate out-of-state landlords not maintaining their housing stock and jacking up rents without maintaining the properties. And
Right.
that is something that really contributes to the high cost of housing. I am so glad. I mean, I'm not going to say anything more about him stealing our
Sure.
policy because look, if we want to get something done, we're going to have to work across the party aisle. And if this is one that we can work across the party aisle, I have a bill that President Trump should be endorsing tomorrow that works on exactly that that path forward to, and a lot of this started happening way back with the housing and financial crisis of 2007 and 2008, where foreclosed properties were being gobbled up, but it's continued and it needs to be stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, another policy that I was, again, floored he even brought into the picture. You would think that he would give his Wall Street friends, another break, but yeah, kind of crazy.
No,
But
he's rewarded them well enough with
yeah,
his big, beautiful bill. He's like
that is correct.
talking about the largest tax cut and whatever. Yeah, the largest tax cut for millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
But in that signature tax bill of Donald Trump's, you would think the centerpiece would have been a working family tax cut to allow them to afford their health care premiums in the Affordable Care Act. And that was
Right.
totally absent from that bill. And therefore, many, many Americans are experiencing, just massive increases in the cost of their premiums and losing health care as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of, understandably so, a lot of frustration amongst all Americans probably, but specifically younger voters. I think like Gen Z is a major focus group for Democrats moving forward in the midterms. What would you say to someone who maybe feels, kind of disillusioned, but really wants change in our country and really wants to see things go forward in a better direction than they have been?
I'd say a number of things, but I'd start with, as somebody who has been around, I recognize that this youngest generation has really never seen a moment of, U.S. unity.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we work from a perspective where the way people communicated was much more straightforward and simple. We all got news from sources that were trusted nationwide. I go back to the days before cable TV. And so,
Sure. Yeah.
people were getting their evening news, and that's when you got it,
Yeah.
from sources that were trusted, news that was vetted. And so it's been a while since we've had a moment of real national unity where we're working together. And I want young people to know that that is possible. And but it's not necessarily probable unless we work at it together. One of the things that probably won't be talked about as much as it should be in the president's speech is all of his proposals that will make it harder for us to sustain our democracy. He talked about
Yeah.
certain voting measures that would really make it so much harder for Americans who want change to get to the polling place and to actually have their vote registered and counted. The euphemistically named SAVE Act is a frightening piece of legislation meant to disenfranchise U.S. citizens and make it really elections for the elite.
Yeah.
They're already getting what they need. It's the rest of us who need to have access to the polling place and be able to exercise our rights.
Yeah. I think, a follow-up to that maybe would be, what would you encourage the everyday working American to be doing right now? I think in a time when it feels really heavy and polarized and everybody is exhausted and everybody's just trying to get by, what are some things that the average everyday American can do to feel like maybe they have some sense of control?
No, I think I I'll give you a quick example that's really relevant. When ICE surged in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, um, a lot of folks started organizing neighbor to neighbor. And they weren't
Yeah.
asking, did you vote for Trump? Did you vote for Biden or Harris? Or, they weren't asking
Yeah.
about party. They're like, um, you're my neighbor and we haven't met yet. And do you need anything? Do you
Yeah.
need help getting a ride to the grocery store? Can I help with this or help with that? And so starting neighborhoods, communities, creating greater unity in that way and understanding the power of each of our voices. I think all of those are really important at a time like this. I mean, I can't remember in our lifetimes a time when you had a, a a president who is trying to threaten our democracy in the way that this president is. And the
Yeah.
way we fight back are multiple. You do it in the courts, you do it in the Congress, you do it in our communities, and you do it in states and localities. And so we got to make sure that those institutions remain strong at this point.
Yeah. I was just talking yesterday with Representative Sarah Jacobs from California, and I said, I saw an Instagram post that said that this account thinks that the word of the year is going to be neighborly for
Mm,
2026. And I
I
said,
like that.
I like that too. I was like, I think that's so fair. I have never seen, again, in my lifetime, never seen the acts of kindness that we have observed in places like Minnesota, in my own community, in Illinois. I think it's really, amidst all of the darkness that is happening and all
Yes,
of
I have to add
everything.
something, and
Yeah.
then I have to close. But
Yeah. Please
our
do.
governor just gave his State of the State address,
Yeah.
and every year he declares the year to come, the year of something. It was the year of the child, the year of mental health. This year he declared this is the year of the neighbor.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So I think a lot of people are in agreement with you that, community at the local level, community and building that community and taking care of our neighbors is the one thing right now that we do have control and agency over. So I appreciate that. Senator, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you, and I appreciate your time. And yeah, looking forward to hearing from you more, and maybe we'll bring you back for a longer episode soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.